And now I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Libby Gill. Ms. Gill's proven clarify, simplify, and execute process inspires people to increase levels of hopefulness in workplace by maximizing their leadership DNA, building high-passion, high-performance teams. Her award-winning book, You Unstuck, Mastering the New Rules of Risk-Taking in Work and Life, has been endorsed by business leaders around the world. Her latest book is Capture the Mind Share and Market Share Will Follow, The Art and Science of Building Brands. For Ms. Gill, success truly starts with you. She lives it, believes it, and promotes it. Her research, observation, and experience make it clear that satisfied and motivated people on a personal level are tantamount to eventual success at the business level. Organizations that are people-centric and that nurture and brand themselves as such are those who will separate themselves from their competition. So please join me in welcoming Libby Gill.
Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Hello. So happy to be here today to talk to you all. This is my favorite subject, people-centric leadership. And when I was doing my homework for this event, I talked to a number of you, and I found out some interesting things about your thoughts about people-centered leadership. And some of you, you are all over it. You practice it. You've been practicing it for years. You've seen its effects. You know what it can do for your people and for your business. And you know who you are, and this is a great opportunity for others to follow you. Some of you said, well, you know, I'm all for it, but the other guys, you know, the guys at the top, not so much. So we'll talk about that. And then some of you said, well, I'm new to this whole concept. In fact, how many of you are new to AME? You know what, I can't see you now. Just applaud if you're new to AME. A lot of you are new to AME, and you should know as you get to know your organization that AME is all about teaching you the meaning of people-centric leadership, not just what and why, but how. How do you implement it in your organization? How do you act on it if not everybody is yet on board? So we're going to talk about that. My goal is to give you some perspective about leadership. I come from a completely different world, and some perspective and also some takeaway assignments that you can choose to do or not. You will be voluntold what they are, but it's going to be up to you to implement. So now, those of you, many of you who have adapted these people-centered leadership principles, you know, you've already seen what it can do for your business, for how people feel, how engaged they are, and it's also had a direct effect on the bottom line. But here's what some of you may not know. The cost of lack of engagement, what that costs us in dollars and cents in this country. So according to the last Gallup survey, and they survey this constantly, and they call it engagement, meaning they look at it in 3 levels. The first level of engagement, those are the people, and you know who you are, and your team knows who you are. These are the people who are passionate, committed, always moving forward, growing, building. The next level is the non-engaged. Those are the people that, you know, they do the job. They're sleepwalking a little bit. They're not doing any harm. They're just sort of there. And then there's a level at the 3rd level. These are the actively disengaged. These are people that are not only checked out, they're often working against the company. Maybe not out of malice, but they just are the ones who undermine, who stir the pot. Now, what percentage of folks do you think fall into that unengaged, actively disengaged? How many people in the U.S. don't have the stats on Canada, so you Canadians, you're off the hook for a minute, but just shout out the percentage of non-engaged workers in the U.S. What do you think? 20%, I heard. What else? 40%? Somebody just nailed it. 70%. 68.5, to be precise, yes, very good, are disengaged from the workforce. And the cost to us, if you don't want to engage your workforce just for the fact that it's the right thing to do, you should know it's the smart thing to do, because the people that aren't engaged are costing us in the U.S. in lost productivity between $450 and $550 billion per year. 550 billion, that's a big number. So if you think your organization is pretty good, but there's that one little sliver of non-productivity, then this is going to be meaningful to you, because that's an important thing to know. I happen to think having a people-centered workplace just for the fact that it's the right thing is good. But if it's too touchy-feely or you're not quite on board with that, that's okay, because it is the smart thing and the commercial thing to do. But before I jump into how you can enact some of this, I want to hear from some of you. Can we have the lights up just a little bit? What I'd love to know is, what do you think is the one trait that distinguishes a truly great leader? What, in your opinion, is the characteristic of greatness? The difference between a good leader or even a great manager to a really great leader. Anybody, just shout out. Servant leadership. You guys are in the splash zone. I love it that you're all up here in the front. Yes, servant leadership. Thank you. Who said that? You did. I've got a You Unstuck book for you. If you want to stick around, I'll sign it for you. Just for being the first to speak up with boldness and clarity. I always appreciate that in a leader. Who else? What's your favorite trait? Effective leader. How about you guys? Enthusiastic. Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more, and you yelled that out enthusiastically. So honesty. Yeah, baseline. Integrity. Honesty. Who? Coaching? That's so important in the people-centered world. Coaching, yeah. Listening, inspired, all of those things, absolutely inspired. Servant leadership, coaching other people, integrity, honesty, all of those things. Being inspiring, so critical. But there's one other element, and I worked 20 years in the corporate world, head of communications at Sony, Universal, Turner Broadcasting, many years in that world. Now, in 2 weeks, it'll be 15 years as an executive coach and leadership consultant. So I've spent a lot of time on the corporate side and also on the business ownership side. And I work with companies and countries across industries, because it's always people and performance. I'm always looking at workplace behavior. So there's one other trait that I think is the most significant. Visionary. That's a good one. That's not what I was going to say, but you're dead on. Visionary. The most important and the most overlooked. And that one trait, you know it when you see it. It's the people that inspire you to take action, the people that, despite any setbacks, any hurdles in front of them, they keep on going with an enthusiastic attitude. And that one trait is hope. And hope, this is just my theory, although it certainly is one of my pet theories, but hope actually comes from an Old English word, hopian, which means to leap forward with expectation, to leap forward. And this whole notion of hope is now, there's a body of research called hope theory that's coming out of medicine and positive psychology. And it's all about how hopefulness affects the workplace. Now, this isn't happiness, which is a general satisfaction with life, which is fine. It's not optimism, which is a sense, in a general sense, that everything's going to turn out all right. That's fine, too. I'm an optimist. Any optimists out there in the room? Myself, the only problem with optimists is that generally, according to data, the pessimists are usually more accurate than we are. But that's okay. There's a place for all you half-empty folks. We need you. But hope is forward-thinking, specific, and situational. It lets you look at the future knowing that there are hurdles and obstacles. There are setbacks coming. It's part of the process, and proceeding anyway. And one of the early theorists, the hope theorists, the pioneers in this whole study of hope theory is a Harvard-trained oncologist, a fellow named Dr. Jerome Groopman. If you're a reader, you might want to take a look at his book called The Anatomy of Hope. He's a doctor, but it's for the layperson. It's all about the physiological effects of hope. And what he found as a clinician was that when he gave diagnoses to patients and their families about cancer, he's an oncologist, at first he would give them every bit of information. Let's give them the whole truth. And what he found was they shut down in overwhelm and were not able to be part of their own healing process. So like we often do, he went all the way to the other end of the spectrum. And he decided to limit. Let's not give them all this information. It's not good for them. And he found the effect was he gave them a sense of false hope that they thought, well, no news is good news. Everything is going to be all right. And what he had to do was find that middle ground of truthfulness, of accuracy, of the what is, what we're dealing with, and knowing that you would move forward despite the obstacles. And he said there are a couple of key components of hope. One is, the first one is the belief that change is possible. Now that sounds kind of obvious, right? We all believe change is possible, or do we? Just think for a minute that that person you know, that naysayer, that person who says things like, well, you can't fight City Hall, you know, it is what it is, don't worry about it. The defenders of the status quo, right? Drive me crazy. People who say, oh, we've always done it that way, or we've never done it that way, or whatever. I love to hear people's, the language of excuse making. Recently, working with the manufacturing group, I heard a new one on me. Welders don't do it that way. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So everybody's got their belief that change is possible or not. So just challenge yourself. How much do you believe that change in your immediate workplace, in your life, is possible? The second component is an expectation that your actions as an individual can have a direct influence on a better outcome. That it's up to you. That goes right back to the theme of your conference. Success, sustained success, depends on you, your decisions and your actions. And what it means in the workplace, what that means to me, and I've done a lot of research on companies that thrive on hopefulness, some that feed hope and others that starve hope, is that belief drives behavior. And think about that for a minute. What you believe, even if you've never thought about it that way, what you believe is what you do. What you believe is how you act, for positive or for negative. Or as one of your early proponents of the lean world said, and he had nothing to do with toast, you got that all over him. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. I mean, think about that. That's really true. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So it really goes back to that idea of belief driving behavior. So what I want you to do right now is I see you're a very vocal group, and I love that. Leadership is all about participation, not hanging back. I want you to find somebody at your table, just a person that I'll call your discussion partner. If you're an odd number, 3 is okay, but if you're 4, that would be 2 twos, so you can split into twos. And just fill in the blank for just a second here, framed in this way. I feel hopeful about whatever, because you believe that change is possible, and you believe that success starts with you, that your actions drive the outcome. Got it? I'll give you a second there, or a minute. Go. Not all at once, just go plunge in. Okay, have you shared both ways? All right. Okay, everybody. I should have prefaced this by saying that I've heard it all from ending world hunger to getting a date on Friday night, so anything in between is fine. What brave soul, what great leader out there. And by the way, when I say leader, I'm not referring to a title, an office, a salary, not even your authority level. I'm talking about someone who's willing to step up, take a risk, take a challenge, do not only what's necessary, but beyond. So leaders are at all levels of the organization. So what brave leader would be willing to share something you feel hopeful about? And by the way, I've got a bribe, a gift, that is, another book for somebody out there who's willing to share with us and share what you're hopeful. What's that? Oh, it's a new career. Good for you. And did you make the rounds and meet people with your selfies? Oh, okay. You, on the other hand, I'm sure you are techno savvy, but that phone of yours is a little old school. That's okay. Tell us your name so everybody knows to meet the newbie. Julie Nelson, everybody. And Julie, I have a book for you because it's not easy to speak up in a room of, 1,500 relative strangers. So good for you. That's the way you get to know everybody all at once. So that's leadership. You feel good about having made this career switch. Your belief and expectation is that you can change because you obviously change careers, and the decisions, the actions that you are taking drive the outcome, right? Very good. Thank you for speaking up. I appreciate that. Because when it comes down to it, it's all about your peeps. It's about the people. It's about, you get it? Peeps, right? Okay. You have those in Canada, don't you? Peeps. All right. Your peeps. It's about the people that you meet, the connections that you make, the relationships that you build and develop. And as leaders, both established leaders and emerging leaders, it's your job. And I would hope it's your calling to help build the people around you. It's all about the people, the peeps and your people-centered management. So I want to go on and give you a little bit of context for my interest, my passion and fascination for people and workplace behavior. I started out, I put myself through college. These are my old headshots from back in the day, working my way through college as a waitress. I got a degree in theater. I was planning on being a movie star. And got a really useful minor in modern dance. Any other modern dancers out there? Well, no, okay, one or two maybe, but you're not willing to admit it. Yes. And I went on from there. I was very hopeful about my career. My family moved around a lot, grew up in a very chaotic household. Went to 6 different high schools, and by the time we ended up in California, I thought, okay, that's it, I'm staying right here. Put myself through school, and after I graduated, I started working. I got my first job, actually still in school, as a talking Christmas tree. Yeah, that's me. I was already sort of in sales and marketing, talking Christmas tree in my local mall, scaring small children, but basically inviting people in to spend all their hard-earned dollars within our mall. But things got better. I went on after that. I became a tap dancing bear at Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California. That's me, the baby bear there. Frankly, I quit after 3 months because it was too hot in that costume. You cannot imagine what it's like wearing a 6'2" costume in 100-degree weather all summer with small children kicking at your heels. So that was enough of that. Nonetheless, I was still hopeful about my future, my career, and I did finally break through and get a commercial. I got my first commercial. Yes, it was a menstrual cramps commercial. Starring the cramped, the bloated, and the fatigued, and I happened to be the bloated one. But at any rate, I was on the map, I was on my way, and finally, after many workshops and sending out photos and meeting with agents and casting calls and all that stuff that you do, I got my big break. I did. I became the hand model for Fancy Feast cat food. Yep, that is me. I know, thank you. How about that? That's scary that gets applause. But you may remember the crystal goblet with the can of cat food and the opening the pop-top. Can we all do that together? That was me. That's right. That was one of my big jobs. At which point, I reevaluated. And when I looked at my yeah, you'd think, yeah, okay. Now, I don't claim to be a numbers whiz, and I've no experience in the lean world. I have managed to do everything the hardest possible way with as many detours as one can manage. But I did figure out that since I was in the top 5 percentile of wage earners, and my big year, I made a whopping $12,000, I thought, okay, even I can see this does not bode well for the future. So I decided my place was behind the camera, and I went to work for really a legendary television guy if you're old enough to remember Norman Lear, who brought us All in the Family, we were talking about this last night, and tons of, at the time, really forward-thinking, socially relevant sitcoms. And I started in Norman's company as a VP in the PR department, so excited, thinking, wow, this is great to work at a small company where you get your hand into kind of everything, until that company was bought by Columbia Pictures, and then Coca-Cola, and then Sony. But what I learned was just, write it out, raise your hand, volunteer, figure it out later. And in 5 years, I went from being an assistant to being a vice president of publicity, advertising, and promotion for 5 divisions of Sony's worldwide television group. And from there, I went on in corporate communications, headed that at Universal and Turner Broadcasting. And what I learned in those years in the corporate world, and now even more so in my own business, was that the really great leaders, and you shouted this out, you shy one, visionary, the great leaders were the ones who not only had the vision, but could marry it with the execution and somehow describe it in a way that was so inspiring and so simple that other people couldn't wait to jump on board and follow along. So it was that process of clarifying the vision and simplifying the pathway. Here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to make a straight line from A to Z. And you may remember, like I do vividly, one of the great moments in history, a great example of this was in 1961 when Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely by the end of the decade. End of story. He didn't say, hey, what do you think about a space program? Or we should be up there checking things around. He said, we're putting a man on the moon. Very clear, concise, and simple. He didn't say how to do it. A whole lot of other people had to figure that out. But he made it crystal clear. That is the beauty of simplicity. You all know this better than anybody because you're all about lean principles, enterprise excellence. But I want you to think about people in those terms. Sometimes people, they're so sort of slippery and ambiguous and scary compared to things like machines and technology and numbers and things you can see and measure. But it's important to apply these principles to your people. And the reason you want to clarify the vision, and I'm going to ask you right now to think of one thing that's going on in your organization or in your own career, one thing that you're not doing but you've thought about, and it's the one thing that can really elevate your success. It's something that will take you to another level. Now, it's not all the stuff that you're doing because you're already doing that, but it's some vision that you have, a project, an idea, an objective that just by virtue of being here at AME, of getting out of the day-to-day, of sitting here and soaking in new ideas and new perspectives that you can go home and implement. So keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And the reason I want you to think of one thing instead of the 49 or 67 things you would otherwise think of, right? It's really important to give your brain that space. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. There was a Columbia Business School study, really fascinating, where they looked at retirement funds. And these are things that had matching dollars and all that kind of stuff like you have in a lot of companies. They crunched the numbers from 800,000 employees at 647 companies, which offered from 2 to 59 options in their retirement funds. And what they found was the more options people had, the fewer participated. Too many options, fewer people. And of those who did participate in their retirement funds, the more choices they had to make, the more cautious they were with their money. Which just goes to show you, even when you've got all kinds of incentives, too much information, we shut down. Just like Dr. Groupman with the too much information to his patients. I mean, you go in and, want to buy, we're talking about drinking milk over here. You go into the store, there's not one choice of milk. There's 40 choices. There's not one pair of jeans. I just don't even buy new jeans because you got to try on 28 different pairs. It's too, they got all different. We don't want all those choices in terms of elevating your game. Think of that one thing that's really important. Simplify the pathway. What do you need to get there? What's going to get in the way? Bad attitudes, excuse making, the wrong people. Get that all out of the way. Bring in what you need to execute the plan, to follow through on your vision, whether that is the accountability that you need, the experts that you need, whatever it is. So it's clarify the vision, simplify the path, and execute the plan. That, to me, is the whole secret to success. Common sense, but not necessarily common practice. So a couple of companies that do that really well, I want to give you a couple of examples. Let me hold off on this one just a second. A couple of companies that do that really well in terms of, let's go back to the clarify, simplify, execute. You all know Zappos, right? Ladies, we know, because that's where a lot of us get our shoes. You know, famous for customer service, right? Free shipping and returns, 365 days a year. I have a friend who, she wants 3 pairs of shoes. She'll order them in 6 different colors and a half size up and down. You know, she'll have 20 pairs of shoes because she can send 17 of them back. You know, it's fine. So they're famous for that. But what you might not know, and I interviewed the CEO, Tony Hsieh, for my book, You Unstuck, and he told me that one thing that's really worked and really empowered their people is that you call their call center, they don't have a script. They're not timing their calls. The people at the call center are allowed to have a conversation, to connect with you as a human being. What a concept, right? You call them, and they say, what do you want? Where are you from? How's the weather? You know, whatever it is, they can say what they want and who they are. But what you can do is if they don't have your 7.5 black pumps, that may not be your shoe of choice, right? That's my shoe. But if they don't have the shoe you're looking for, that call center person, man or woman, can go to up to 3 other websites to find those shoes for you at the competitors. And I said to Tony Hsieh, well, wait a minute. That's like the old movie Miracle on 34th Street when Macy's sent you to Gimbels if they didn't have the gift. He said, exactly. Because we don't want the sale, we want the customer. Found that theory was absolutely right because on any given day, 75% of sales are to return customers. It works, and it makes their people feel great. We were talking about Southwest Airlines just a minute ago. I spoke on the platform once with the former President Colleen Barrett, who said, you know, when the airline started, it was the people's airline. It was, you know, everybody could afford it. But they couldn't create a handbook that would cover every situation for 30,000 employees. There was no way they could do that. So what they did was, and we were talking, Jerry, about how they've had some glitches in the lean world and the operations side, but the people are fantastic. What they did is they wrote a handbook, of course, you got to have that. They hired great people, they trained them really well, and then they trusted their judgment. So if somebody wants to give you extra peanuts or upgrade you at the gate or do what they do, they have parameters, of course, but they trust and empower their people to make good decisions. That gives people a sense of authority, of mastery, of ownership, and most of all, of significance, that what they do matters. They're not just a little cog in the wheel and they can't see the whole machine. They get exactly what they participate and contribute in and how that makes everyone successful. That's critical. Now, looking at the language of leadership, what might this sound like in your workplace? Again, it starts with vision. You start at the very top. This is the vision. I was working with an automotive company a while back. They did everything that looked really people-centric. You know, the big posters that said trust and respect all over. Open pod, office place, you know, the boss is out in the pool with everybody else. All those things that sounded good, but they had gotten beat up by their competition. They were aging in the tech space, and lots of other people had jumped in. There was this sense among the employees who were too scared to talk about it that there's no vision. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going on. And if something good is changing, we haven't heard about it. So you want to share your vision. You want everybody to be able to restate the vision, to know what it is. What is that high-level mission? What is it that you have to accomplish? Everyone should be able to say that. Not in the sense of it's a plaque that we put in the hall in the cafeteria, but a living, breathing vision that we can latch onto. Next, as a leader, you got to share the plan. How is it we're going to get there? How is it we're getting to the moon again? Well, you hire a whole bunch of smart scientists, and then we're going to build. get the plan together, however you do it. I think you all are masters of that piece of it. Now, how do you give ownership and risk-taking and encouragement and develop your talent as they become part of that plan? What can you push down to them? The hardest part of leadership is letting go, of course. What can you push down? You may not want to bet the entire company on your new intern's judgment and decision making, but you want to start giving people projects and ownership that may be uncomfortable for you. Where's Greg Wall? He's another one who talked about his company that he's moving down so others can move up. That's critical. There's got to be a point where everybody else can run the company, understands the plan. Next, you want to be able to ask everybody weekly, if not daily, what do you need from me? What do you need from me? How do I help you get there? You know your chunk of the plan. What is it you need from me? Because the truth is, as leaders, and even, especially you all that are owners, you work for your employees. They don't work for you. It's the other way around. They make you successful. So you want to take care of them. You want to push and help and encourage them. Feedback is critical. And I'm going to tell you in a minute, I'm going to send you some follow-up information. I'll send you something about feedback and also an article that I wrote about the language of leadership with more detail around this. Next, you all, again, masters of this. How do we improve? Continuous improvement. You can apply that to your business operations, but think about it with your people. How do we improve our communication? How do we improve our feedback? How do we improve our attitude? What is it that you need to do in a people-centric sense that has that ongoing improvement? And one thing, those of you that are younger, emerging, growing leaders, you must train your management to give you feedback. Not in a needy or, oh, I'm begging for approval sense, but in a when it matters, hey, how'd that go? And I want to give a hint for women because sometimes I do a lot of work in women's leadership and men are sometimes lost because, you know, the rules have changed a little bit on giving feedback to women. You got to ask for it. You got to train them that it's okay. You know, hit me upside the head if I said something I shouldn't have. Tell me what, you know, how could I do better? Don't ask every 2 seconds. Don't ask in a needy fashion, but get that feedback so it's going both ways. And finally, celebrate your success. I have a feeling some of you do that. But celebrate the big milestones along the way, but also all of those little successes, all of those things that help you really make your people recognize, feel great about what they do. And some of you are terrific about that. I'm going to give an example from Greg Williams from ERA. Are you out here somewhere? Shout. I can't see it. Yeah. Oh, right here, right in front. So Greg told me, when we were talking, told me that he did a really sounds simple, again, simple but not easy, when he was trying to really apply, and he's a master of it. By the way, everybody named Greg, McDougall, Williams, Wall, all of you who are new, and especially Julie, you want to meet anybody named Greg? Because these are the guys who have put people-centric leadership to work. Hey, they've got it mastered, so go find all the Gregs. Anyway, so Greg Williams said to me that at first, with his team, he wanted to really apply these principles. He tried on an individual level. Let's just get to know each other better. You want to know your talent. You want to know what people care about, what they're great at, what they don't care about, what they're not great at, in an unthreatening and a safe way. And so he tried that. Then let's apply it on a team approach, see how that goes, build some deeper relationships. And somehow it wasn't quite clicking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but didn't quite click quite the way he wanted to. So he said, okay, Monday morning strategy meeting. Monday morning meeting, here's what we're going to do. Hour-long meeting, we hit all the top-line strategy. We're just going to start with half an hour about us. Going to talk about you. You know, what'd you do this weekend? How are the kids? Where are you going on vacation? And you know what he found? Well, at first people were a little suspicious, like, what book did you read? What seminar did you take? I know there's a trick here. But what they found was it was absolutely genuine. And after a little while, they began to adapt to that. The rapport built, the communication built, then the trust built, then the productivity built. Next thing you know, they're Zooming. They've got each other's backs. They're speaking the same language. Everything is moving along. That's what happens. But it does take time and effort. Doesn't take a ton of money. Doesn't take all kinds of fancy solutions. Some of the simplest things. Let's talk about ourselves for half an hour. Let's get to know each other as people. What a concept, right? But as Jimmy told me, where are you? Said earlier, as he told me, Jimmy Tim, you're out here somewhere, I know, said transformation doesn't take place overnight. It takes place over time. So you can't do that once and say, well, you know, that was a little awkward. We're not doing that again. You've got to implement it and keep at it. You want to keep working that until the barriers start to come down, because you don't know what's happening at home. You don't know what's going on in the rest of somebody's life. It's really important that you apply some behaviors like deep listening. Deep listening, that means really paying attention, putting your gadgets down. And one thing I've seen some companies do very effectively at those strategy meetings, ban electronics. Put them in a box when you come in the door, no tablet, no iPhone, no nothing. You will be surprised how focused and how fast your meetings become. Pay attention, listen, focus. Just like many of us are trying to do with our kids, because we're so used to that, that fourth utensil sitting there on the table next to our knife and fork, right? Deep listening. It gives such a sense of respect and trust. Sharing information, that's another one. When I worked in entertainment, information was gold. It was gold, and you only gave it to the people that you trusted, both up and down the ladder. You want to share information freely. Yes, some things are proprietary. You can't share everything, but anything you can share, share. And I don't just mean the facts. I mean the emotional truths, the nuances, what's happening on the shop floor. You want to share that information so that you build that trust, rapport, and openness. You also want to make sure that when people come up with an idea, and I think you heard some of this from Lisa Bodell, with an idea that you consider it seriously. You don't dismiss it out of hand. Take suggestions seriously. And I always find the naysayers, they may bug you, but if you listen to the naysayers, you will often get a better idea. There's something they've got in mind that they're trying to impart. Now, there's a way to do that gracefully, and your timing is important, but you want to consider ideas and suggestions from others seriously. And finally, this seems obvious. I know your mother told you, your father told you, but be polite, be caring, be grateful. Say please, say thank you, say job well done. If corporate America just got a big pat, and Canada, pat on the back once in a while, I'd be out of a job. So much of it is about employees who just aren't happy, who aren't growing, who aren't challenged, who don't feel good coming to work. And some of these solutions are quite simple. You just have to remind yourself that they're important. So why don't you do all of this all of the time? Why aren't we perfect human beings? Well, we've all got a little baggage. We've got a little baggage. We are who we are by virtue of our upbringing, our background, our ethnicity, our gender. All of that stuff comes to the office with us. I'm somewhat of an expert on baggage, having written an entire book about letting go of family baggage. As I mentioned, my household was very chaotic. In fact, it involved alcoholism, mental illness, suicide. I mean, all of these things. By the time I was age 30, I'd lost 7 family members to a variety of tragedies. So I know a lot about baggage, and I've worked very hard to overcome it. But it sticks with us. So you've got to be aware that you've only got that one lens. You've got that filter that you view the world through. So I want to try a little experiment right now with you. And if somebody could bring the lights up just a touch, that'd be great. About, how much baggage you might be carrying, how you view perspective. So right now where you're sitting, just lace your fingers together. And you may have seen this, but I'm going to twist it a different way. Just like you would comfortably. And I've got my left thumb on top. So I want to raise the lights a little bit more. And let's see, raise your hand and keep it up. Everybody that's got left thumb on top when you do this. Who's got your left thumb on top? Okay, let's see. Looks like about 40%. Usually split 60-40. Right thumb on top. Raise your hand. All right, some of you obviously neither thumb was on top. I don't know how you're doing it, but it's generally 60-40, 50-50. So now just switch it the other way. Maybe you've tried that. It's just a little, whoa, oh, that's weird. That just doesn't quite want to go there, does it? It doesn't really fit. You could do it if you have to. But all right, so now we're going to up the ante on this. Do a little perspective check. Cross your arms. Just cross your arms comfortably how you would do this. Now, I had my left thumb, but I've got my right arm. There is no correlation there. And it has nothing to do with dominant hand, or we'd be 90-10. Oh, you lefties, the world is just not set up for lefties, you know, it's right. If you're a lefty and an introvert, set up for right-handed extroverts. That's just the way it is. So anyway, so look and see what arm you've got on top now. Now just look over at your neighbor, see if they're doing it right. Okay, all right, yeah, that's, now you know what's coming, right? Switch your arm, twist it, okay, now, yeah, I see you doing that. So they don't even want to go there. It just feels weird, right? Okay, so now go back how you're comfortable. Right arm on top. Those of you with your, raise your hand if you had your right arm on top. Okay, those of you left arm on top. A little bit more, we're more 60-40-ish. Okay, just be comfortable, cross your arms back. And those of you who have your right arm on top like I do, good news for you, because you are genetically predisposed to be a hopeful leader. No. I had you there for a second though, didn't I? No. Doesn't actually mean anything, except this is a choice you picked when you were about 3 years old, and you've done it this way forever, and that's how you're always going to do it. But you know what's interesting is the rest of the world, about half of you, feel just as strongly about doing it the other way, and that's really what perspective is. We are wedded to our belief systems. We are wedded to what's comfortable for us, and sometimes looking at it from the other person's point of view can be really difficult. So you want to think about who's coming to work every day, what their background is. I'm not suggesting you get too nosy or personal or coax or coddling or any of that, but that you think about there are other ways to do things. There are other ways to be in the world. And so now let's go on to, let's go to the next one here. And what I want to do is let you know, I want to help you with this because I see so many people. I mean, I wrote an entire book, You Unstuck, about getting people out of their own mindset. You know, that's the way it is. So I'm going to give away a coaching session to someone in this room. We can do it. You can use it for yourself, give it as a gift, bring the whole team on the phone. Last week I talked to a whole group of home health care people in Nebraska. They brought the whole team on Skype. And all you do is just drop a business card at your registration table, and we're going to pull one out of the hat and give a coaching session to you later. You can use it to talk about leadership, communication, hopefulness, crossing your arms different ways, whatever you want to use it for, it is yours. I will tell you, full disclosure, I will sign you up for my monthly newsletter. Once a month, I don't spam you and I don't overdose you. And I'll give you my ebook called The Hope-Driven Leader at the same time. If you don't want to be on the newsletter, you're making a huge mistake, I'll tell you that now. But write opt-out, write opt-out on it. I won't put you on it, but you'll still be eligible for that coaching draw. And you could, we can put selfies up also. You can go run around the city at the same time. Not part of this challenge, but you're welcome to add that on. So I want you to be sure and drop that. I wanted to tell you one more thing here, that it's so important that conferences like this, no matter what technology we ever have, until they can start zooming people in like they used to do on Star Trek, we're going to have to meet face-to-face. We're going to want to meet face-to-face because you get that recommitment, that reigniting purpose, that sense of excitement about your careers again, and then you got to take it home. And sometimes that Monday morning letdown when things start to fade, and I don't want that to happen. I want you to take something from this presentation, from a chance conversation in the hallway, from all the other things you're sitting in and listening and absorbing. And so I want to share this with you. One of the many stops I made in all my different high schools was in Japan. Went to high school, that's where I first learned about Kaizen, and learned a lot about Eastern philosophy, found it fascinating as a kid. And this little guy is a folk toy that you would buy in a shrine or a temple in Japan. He's called Daruma. He is the god of perseverance. He sat by the riverside praying for 3 years, and his legs fell off. Then he didn't want to stop praying, so his eyelids fell off. That's the story. So Daruma is this symbol for perseverance. He's like a little weeble, kind of a roly-poly. You knock him down, he bounces back up because, of course, he's persevering. So what you do with this toy, you would buy this for yourself or someone else when they are embarking on some new intention. You color, it comes with those big round eyes. You color in one eye. You set your intention. So think now about that one-year vision. One-year vision we talked about a minute ago. Set that intention firmly in your mind. Then when that comes to fruition, you color in the other eye when that comes true. And typically people would buy this for themselves or others when they're starting a new job. Julie, you got to have one. When they are getting married, having a child, that sort of thing. And I'll tell you, despite my many moves, my first baby picture is at age 8, if that tells you anything. This is my Daruma that I've had since I was a kid, since I was about 15. And I made my wish, and I wished for a pretty house, a happy family, and a good job. And I thought, yeah, pretty good wish. Still holds up really well today. And when I hit 40, I thought, well, it's about time. And I started to color in, you can see up there, I started to color in that other eye. And then I thought, wait a minute, not so fast here. I think there's more there. I'm not quite finished yet. I want to continue to evolve and change. So I just stopped. I just didn't color anything else in. And my hope is on my dying gasp, I'll say, hand me a Sharpie, and I'll finish it off. But meantime, this guy just kind of sits on my desk and looks at me and reminds me of what I want to be held to. What are those intentions? What am I doing about them? How am I helping others? How am I being a servant leader? How am I taking care of my family? What am I contributing to my community? So I want to ask you right now if you would be willing to take something that you'll learn from this conference home with you, and if you're willing to do one simple homework exercise, I guarantee it will take you less than an hour in the course of a month. Just raise your hand if you want to take something home with you. And by the way, unless you have a doctor's note, your hand will be in the air. That means you. I see you there. Don't think I can't see. Okay. So I'm assuming all hands are risen, and if they're not, I shamelessly call out that person. Okay, there you go. All right. Here's what you have just volunteered for. That person next to you that you spoke to a few minutes ago, your discussion partner, that is now your accountability buddy. And what you will be doing, I can't make you, but I highly recommend it. What you will be doing is having 4 phone calls, not a text, not an email, and not an in-person. This is meant to be lean, brief, and focused. A 10-minute phone call 4 times, once a week for 4 weeks. 5 minutes. What was that vision that you set? What was that big, bold vision you set for the year? What action did you take towards it this week? You either did it. It's a yes or no question. There's no ambiguity. You did it or you didn't. My job as your partner is to say, oh, you didn't do it. Well, how can I help you get there for next week? It's a combination of pat on the back, job well done if you did it, kick in the rear end, a little extra support if you didn't. You would be amazed at how life-changing. I know many of you do this. Find someone else. The universe chose that person, whether it's your boss, your best friend, total stranger, for you to do this with, to get a completely different perspective, a different set of life experience, to find out how other people do it in their companies. That's what you want to do. And so I hope you'll all go home and do this. When I started my first business, my only business, I was in my late 40s when I started this business, sole support of my kids, and I decided I wanted to start this coaching business without really knowing what it was. And I started day one with an accountability partner. Didn't call her that back then. I didn't know there was such a thing. But 15 years later, it's changed. I'm on my 3rd accountability buddy now. But it has changed the course of not only my career, but of my life. To know that it's not just that one person, but there's a lot of support out there. My favorite quote from Helen Keller is, together, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And it's really true. And I want to wrap up here with one last little story for you. This is a mountain. I seem to be on an Asian theme. This is a mountain in the Himalayas, a monastery on this cliffside called Tiger's Nest. And when I have 2 boys, I've got one in grad school, one in college. And one of my sons became very ill in high school in his junior year. Worst time for a kid to be sick. And it took us about 2 years to get it diagnosed and managed. And after that point, graduated with honors, so proud of him. He said to me, you know, "Shush, maybe we should go on a trip." And I said, "Yeah, you name it." And he said, "Okay, let's go to Bhutan." And I said, "Where's Bhutan?" And he said, "Well, you know, it's in between China and India." I said, "Great, sounds good." I would have gone anywhere he named, but we went to Bhutan. And we took this picture on the side of this mountain, and this is called Tiger's Nest, because only a tiger, a flying tiger, could fly this monastery up into this hillside and drop it there. And on the last day of our visit, we hiked up to this monastery. Now, not a serious hike. It was only 2 or 3 miles and 1,400 stairs, but we were at 10,000-foot elevation, so, you know, yeah, it was a little bit of a trek. And for someone who's been sick and someone else who's been worried sick, you can believe it was a very difficult climb, and we were determined. So we were pulling each other along, laughing, dragging each other, climbing our way to the top of that thing. And now I have a motto that I use in the business world that to me was just inspired by our having climbed this mountain together, and that is, lift as you climb. Lift as you climb. That is what it's about. As you climb that ladder, as you climb each project, as you face each challenge, take someone with you. That is your job. That is the role of a leader, is to take others on that journey with you. So remember to lift as you climb and take those action steps that are going to help you and others hit that one-year vision. This is where you can find me. These are my books on my website on Amazon. I really do welcome your phone calls, your emails, your tweets, and I'll have people call me 6 months later and say, I'm at a fork in the road, can you help? And I'm always happy to do that. So please stay in touch. And remember, my tweetable, lift as you climb. Thank you all.